Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our November edition of Bites and Bits of History. My name's Tracy Manning, and I'm very excited to welcome you all to what's going to be our kickoff to our holiday season. As you may have heard, we are not hosting what would have been our 12th annual Memories of Christmas Past exhibit at the Arms Family Museum this year, given the current health crisis. The safety of our visitors, volunteers, and staff was paramount in this decision, and we hope to be back in person next season. In lieu of the exhibit, we have planned a wide variety of virtual offerings to help celebrate the history and culture of this season. And stay tuned after the presentation to hear about all of those great offerings this season. Now, today's program, we are welcoming a longtime friend of the Mahoning Valley Historical Society, Dr. George Johnson. He is an avid collector of Christmas ornaments and decor, and probably one of the most knowledgeable historians about the roots of those traditions and the different cultures that they come from. He has curated exhibits at several historical sites and museums, including our own Memories of Christmas Past exhibit at the Arms Museum. He's an author of several books about ornament history and a longtime friend of Anthony Warelia, our exhibit designer of Memories of Christmas Past. So he will be speaking today about the art of the glassblower. So, Dr. George Johnson.
Today we're going to talk about the art of the glassblower, and in particular how it relates to Christmas decorations. The art of the glassblower goes back into the Roman time period, and in Germany we find glass-blown, mold-blown pieces in the shapes of swans and in the shapes of heads that were used for perfume bottles. And so the German tradition of blowing glass and making things out of molds goes back 2,000 years. But we're going to skip forward into the 1850s so that we can talk a little bit about the development of glass as Christmas decorations. Mold-blown Christmas ornaments over the years from the 1850s into the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, there were tens of thousands of various molds that were made. And in some of the images that you'll see, you're going to see some of those dolls' heads, flowers, birds, a wide range of decorations were made during that time period. We're going to start with the earliest of those decorations. And we find in the 1850s the first recorded incident of an order for a Christmas ornament blown in glass. And this is the type that would have come out in the 1850s. It has a short pike on it, and the top is very different from what we would see today. It actually has a loop of wire in it with a cork that holds that in place. It's silvered. Originally, these started out in Germany as what would have been called a panorama ball or a garden ball, and it went like this on a pedestal in your garden. Somewhere along the line, somebody had the idea of, these would look really cool on a Christmas tree. Turn it upside down, put a cork into the pike, a little wire to hang it, and you have a Christmas ornament. That was blown on a glob of glass on a pike in a hot furnace. This one was blown the same way, except it was clamped into a mold. This is actually a pine cone. And again, you can see the cork in the top and the wire across the top. These are the very earliest of the Christmas decorations that have a hanger like that. So this one blown into a mold from the 1850s is a very rare piece. Another interesting one is one that collectors call a shekken. This is a clear glass ball with bits of paint and wax to hold it all in place, so that it had some color and some decoration on otherwise what is a clear glass ball. And then as time went on, as we went into the 1860s and 1870s, the pike disappears at the top, we have a decorative cap at the top. And one of the things that's interesting about both this one and the red one that we saw, these are actually colored glass. These are not painted. So the glass itself is green, and then it's silvered on the inside. There's a misnomer amongst a lot of times antique dealers. They call it mercury glass. There is no mercury in any of these Christmas ornaments. It's silver nitrate, the same type of silvering that goes on the backs of mirrors, and that's why you get this mirror effect. The real reason for the mirrored effect is that these ornaments went to the inside of the tree with a candle on the outside of the tree. The candlelight came in and reflects out. So in the next image, we see the pine cone, we see a group of grapes that was also blown in a mold, and a series of 3 of those kugel-type ornaments that are all joined together to make a chain. As we went into the 1880s, the Germans moved from making a ornament in this hot furnace, like a lot of glass blowers do today, and they made it on what they called the lamp. And you see an image of a German lamp. And it was fueled by rape oil seed, and it had a controlled flame that you could work with much thinner glass and over a longer period of time. This allowed them to develop a long pike of glass held over that flame and heated up into bubbles to make regular balls, or to heat it up into bubbles that were then placed into molds. In this particular image, you see 4 men working around a table, working at the lamp with the long glass rods, generally making the bubbles that they would make into other decorated pieces. And in this image, you see 3 men working around the table. You see lots of glass rods in the background. And in the foreground, you see a whole tub full of these glass rods that have already been made and the bubble put into the inside. Those bubbles will be heated up again, so become malleable, and then they'll either be blown or they will be put into a mold to make a molded ornament. So this is the process of making decoration, and although typically within a German glass blowing family, it was the males that was doing the glass blowing itself, there were also females, and you have an image here of a lady. The glass blowing industry in Germany was centered around a small town called Lauscha, and it changed a lot when they got gas coming into the homes so that they could run the gas lamp that you see this lady working at, as opposed to that early rape oil light. Many times the ladies in the family were working on silvering. We talked about that silver nitrate that went into the decoration. And in this particular image, you see the clear glass ornaments that have been made. They're going into a bath of hot, soapy water after the silver nitrate is put into the ornament itself. It's squished around to coat the inside, and then it's put into this tub of warm, soapy water to solidify that silvering on the inside and clean the glass for painting purposes. In this image, you see a picture of a mold, and the Santa Claus that actually was molded in that mold. It has an opening at the top and the bottom where that glass rod that we were talking about lay into that mold. So you could have an opening in the bottom, which we see in this Santa, which has a clip-on the bottom, or the opening in the top so that a metal top and hanger could go in it and it could hang. Either one could be made from the same mold. This one is an original German mold from probably the turn of the century to the 1920s. This one is of a bird. And in this one we have a peacock, again an original mold. And indented ornaments, or reflectors they were called, were very popular, not as expensive as a mold-blown piece, but you still use these 2 small porcelain indents to push that hot glass in, and then after it's silvered and painted, you have the results that you see here. And in the images, you see the exact reflector molds that make the reflectors in each of the ornaments that are shown. So here's a German lady painting a round ball. It's interesting because she's painting it in the upside down position. The opening is at the top normally, but this one has the opening at the bottom so she can actually spin it with her hand. You get this nice smooth lines going through. And here you see ornaments that have been painted and they're drying. They have the long pike still left on them. They're turned upside down onto a nail board, and there they'll dry overnight or for maybe 2 days, depending upon the process. So the ladies are painting, and then they're putting them into the nailed board to dry. Here's another image of the same one. The ladies, the ornaments have already been silvered. Generally, they've been lacquered, and these ladies are putting on the final touches in colored paints. And in this last one, we see Christmas treetops, or points sometimes they're called. Again, being worked on by the ladies in the family, and one of the girls in there is just very young. So the ladies in the family typically did the silvering and the painting, while the gentlemen did the hot work with the mold work. Here you see a series of images of how that process that we've just kind of looked at, period images of. This one is of a Santa Claus, which was probably one of the most popular of the figural blown glass ornaments. You see the pike that has started off with just a bubble in the glass. It went into the mold. These are mouth blown. The image at the very top of those rods you can see is rolled over. The glass worker would blow into it. That hot bubble of glass would expand into the mold. And when he pulled it out, he would have that clear glass Santa. The next step is the silvering. The next step is a gold underlay. And then becomes the start of the actual decorating. The Santa gets his red coat. And then the next step, he gets a green tree. And then finally, that pike is cut off. And a glass, short glass pike left at the top. And that's where the metal cap goes on. So you see the whole 6-step process in that particular image. So after that piece is finished, it's put into a box typically of about a dozen, depending upon size, maybe half a dozen, maybe 18. And then they're taken to the railway station. So in this particular image, you see 4 ladies with huge baskets on their back, but they're not heavy because they're full of tiny glass ornaments. They're taking them to the railway station in Lauscha or in Neustadt, where they'll be shipped around Germany, to Russia, to France, to England, but lots of them were sent to the United States. The United States was the biggest buyer of glass Christmas ornaments at this time period. So this is how they would show up in a shop. We have 12 ornaments in there. They would probably have started out with all those Santa heads, and then as they were sold, the storekeeper would consolidate them down. So in this particular image, you see Santa heads, you see a Santa body, and you see some grapes all consolidated down. These would probably have sold in the teens and the 20s for about a nickel a piece, maybe 4 cents, maybe 6 cents, but on average about 5 cents a piece. So the biggest seller in the United States was Woolworth's. Woolworth really made the ornament business, the glass ornament business in Germany thrive. Here's a Woolworth store from about the 1920s, 1930s. And primarily on the left-hand side of that image, you'll see Christmas trees, you'll see garlands, and these pieces were sold one at a time out of boxes or out of bins. Again, for anywhere from 3 or 4 cents for a simple ball up to a dime for really elaborate pieces. So these are what those free-blown balls would have looked like coming out of Germany. They were not made in a mold of any kind. The ornament maker had a little cardboard disc that he would measure width to see that the ornaments were pretty much the same size, but you can see from looking at this particular image, they're not perfectly round. They're all free blown. These were a cheaper ornament, but one of the best ways to sell your ornaments to the American market was to have them highly decorated. So one of them you see has a beautiful butterfly on it, made by the mother of the family, perhaps the grandmother, a flower, simple rib or ribbon designs, and another one that's colored with a flower, but it's also an indented piece. So these were basically free-blown pieces that did not need to have any kind of a mold. These are also free-blown pieces, a little bit larger than those. The piece in the center is a reflector, a large one, and each one of those pieces, these are not simple balls. That glass blower had to work with wooden paddles, gloved hands, and things like that to create these out of the hot glass. Now, with this particular, we're looking at two boats. One's a steamboat, one's a sailboat. The steamboat, actually the mast that's in the center, this is a really simple shape. It's an oblong. Remember that blowing pike we were talking about, that they blew it? Well, when they cut it off, they didn't just throw it away. A lot of times it was incorporated into the art itself. So in that steamboat at the top, that blowing pike is actually now the mast of that ship, and then the steam chimneys also on it. Same thing with the bottom one. We have the addition of a paper sail that was made specifically for the glass blowing industry, and the glass pike is what holds that sail, that paper sail, in place. This is a rifle. These are Victorian ornaments. You can see that wire wrapping makes a big difference to what these particular pieces were. They added a lot of glitter and flash to the tree, but you also took something that's basically a simple glass blown piece and you create what it is by adding some tinsel to it. We have two flower baskets here in this particular image, again with lots of tinsel on it. And in this particular image, we have a flower basket. The piece itself in glass is very simple, a teardrop shape, but the opening at the top, instead of having a cap in it, has a paper flower in it. And then we have, as a hanging loop, tinsel, and the whole thing held together by what collectors call crinkle wire. And then one that's a little larger, a little bit more elaborate, is a mandolin. This part would have been blown first, just as a small ball. Then the teardrop shape in the center was blown, and then it was indented in the center. The blowing pike is left on, and then we add to it wire and a chromolithograph scrap and a spray of tinsel. So we end up with a very beautiful glass Victorian ornament. This would be from the 1880s to the 1890s up to the 1900s. So the next image that you'll see has, again, Victorian pieces, another sailboat. These feature chromolithograph scraps of Santas riding in those ornaments. And then we're going to move to ornaments that were blown in molds. Pretty much everything we were looking at there was free blown. Okay? So you get a lot more detail when you move into mold blown ornaments. The image that you're looking at now has a monkey, a bulldog, and a bird. The monkey is a little bit more unusual. The bird is much more common. The monkey has the word radio written across its head. Its two arms are up, and it's holding earphones. This was the way that you listened to the very earliest of the radios. And he's sitting in a wicker chair. Then we have a bulldog head and a beautiful bird. The bird is not silvered like the other two pieces. Its color is strictly on the outside. In the next piece, we have a comic strip character from the 1920s called Smitty. He's in the first image, kind of the large head and the small body. Then we have a beautiful girl inside a basket, or carrying a basket as the case may be, with a flesh-colored face. And then a Madonna at the end. Very silvered, very white-looking, dark hair, and painted face. All of these were made somewhere from about 1915 up to about the middle of the 1930s, and all of these were made in molds. So the next image that you'll be seeing is an unusual one. The glass blowers always wanted to try and make something that was different, unusual, that could be sold. This one is a front and back, and you can see that in the very first picture. There's Santa Claus on one side, on the opposite side is an angel. Okay, and it's actually viewed, designed to be viewed from two different angles. And in the other image you see the full face of the angel, but it's actually a split mold that would have had not a front and a back, but two fronts. And in the next one, we have a little bit more modern ornament that, again, blown into a mold. But this one, again, it has that creative element to it that some designer came up with. It's called a topsy-turvy. And it has a hanging point at both ends, because on this particular top that I'm showing you right now, we have a smiling gentleman's face. When we topsy-turvy it, we have a frowning man's face. And in another piece that, again, was a little bit harder to make and a little bit more unique, I guess I didn't put it up. And the image that you're seeing is a three-faced boy. So that mold had to have three parts to it. We have a smiling boy, a crying boy, and a frowning boy, all on the same ornament that could be viewed from three different angles. So the next image that you're seeing has a doll's head, an angel in a harp, and a teddy bear with extended legs. Each of those have a little bit different story to tell. The doll's heads, collectors typically call them doll's heads, but the other thing that we are reminded of in these images of a child's head was the fact that the infant mortality rate at this time is extremely high. So one of the suppositions are that they're not always dolls' heads, but a lot of times they're memorial pieces for children who have died shortly, in their youth. The angel is a really interesting, difficult piece to make. The angel is blown into a mold. The pike that came out the bottom is then expanded into an indent, tear-shaped indent at the bottom, and then the glass horns for the side rails to the lyre are annealed on and brought up around the angel. It's a very difficult piece to actually build, and there would be a lot of mistakes and broken pieces and things like that that didn't work out. So these would have been some of the more expensive types of pieces. The next one that you're seeing there is a teddy bear, and this one is, the body is blown in a mold, and then the two legs are glass tubes that are blown out and annealed onto. The annealing process is to heat both parts of the glass, the leg part and the body part, and fuse them together. Again, mistakes can easily be made and the glass easily broken. And so again, those would have been some of the more expensive types of pieces. So in the next image, you see pieces that are kind of married together to create something that's kind of interesting. In the first image that you're looking at, you see a chicken coop. that's a clip onto a tree so it would stand upright, and the part where it would naturally hang from the top of the tree is now taken up by a bird. So we have a chicken coop or a birdhouse with a bird on the top, and the bird on the top would have been blown separately and attached to it. Same thing with the piece that's in the center of that image. You see essentially what might be a bird's nest that has an indent in it, and then the bird is attached to the center of it. And in the last one, we have a type of reflector, deeply indented, and then a small glass bubble is blown. It's filled with colored water, sealed, and then annealed into that glass in a multiple step process. So any time that the limb on that tree would shake, the water in that will shake and creates a flashing movement against the silvered back of the ornament. Okay, another type of ornament that was mold blown but something different done with it. You're seeing a tulip. The top of the tulip is very wide open. It's hollow. It is not silvered, all the paintings on the outside, and it has a candle clip at the bottom. This is actually a candle shade. So when we put candles on the trees, the candle will sit down inside of that tulip, and as it's lit and burns down, the light will shine through the colored glass of the ornament. Not surprising, not a lot of these survived. If the candle would tip, it would burn the glass. It's very thin glass so that the light would shine through it. So a mold-blown flower put to a different use as a shade for a candle. The next image, again, involves the idea of marrying different mold-blown pieces together. This one is a rather large pine cone that would have been blown. Then we have two owls that also would have been blown separately, and then the pieces molded together into one unified creative piece by the mold blower. So essentially, this would have been an expensive piece simply because you've got three separate pieces all pulled together. And in the other image that you're looking at, you have a rose and two birds perched on either side of that rose. Again, multiple mold-blown pieces put together to create one piece. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk to you about in terms of mold-blown pieces are ones that are called two-step molds. In the image that you're looking at now, you have an old one that was probably made in the 1920s or 30s. It features a tree, a pine tree at the top, comes down, and that pike is blown out into an indent. So in this process, the piece that's on the bottom is actually blown first. So a hot ball, glass ball is blown first, it's indented, and then the rest of that pike would have been put into a mold and the tree blown. And this set, we have again two-step molds. The three images that you're looking at are ornaments that are made by Christopher Radko Company, made in Germany. This one is a clown. It has a mold-blown figural piece at the bottom, the clown at the top, and then chenille arms attached to it. And the second image you see in the picture is a squirrel with a oak leaf and acorns on it. And in the last one, a smaller piece that is a rabbit with a carrot underneath. In each one of these, this piece is blown first, the bottom piece. Then you have that short glass pike. These are not attached together. They're all blown as one piece. The ornament maker then pulls this part out, blows another hot bubble of glass, lays it into a mold, blows into that pike, and forms that clown. And then the whole process, silvered, painted, and the last step is to attach those chenille arms onto it. So Germany was not the only place that was making glass ornaments. In this image you see Czechoslovakian ornaments. Not all decorations were made in Germany. The Czechoslovakian glassblowers specialized in beaded, making beads and then making ornaments out of beads. So in this image you see how they've used glass rods and small glass beads all hooked together with wire to make these geometric shapes. And in this grouping, these small, tiny glass beads are glued onto a glass ring, and then smaller glass beads on the inside create this star shape. Decorative stars done with glass rods and small beads were also made into chains. One of the more unusual designs that the Czechs also did that the Germans did not do is a piece like this, and it actually glows in the dark. It's coated on the inside not with silvering but with fluorescence that has been fused into wax. So during the day the sunlight would charge this up, and at night it would glow. They also did some very interesting creative pieces. This is a motorcycle, probably made in the 30s or late 40s. Everything here is made out of beads and glass rods. So using wire and the right beads and the right glass, circles. We have spokes, we have the gas tank, we have the handlebars, we have the seat, we have pretty much everything that motorcycle would have. Again, a lot of work went into a piece, like this that would hang on your tree. And in the image that you're looking at, you also have an airplane. You have a glass ring with a blown soldier on the inside, a mold blown soldier on the inside, and a smaller bicycle. Again, the tires on that look those are very tiny glass beads that have all been glued onto a glass circle. They also specialized in large garlands of beads. This one is probably from the teens of the 1900s. This one is from the 1990s, but again made in Czechoslovakia. This one has images of St. Nicholas on it. So the art glass of the 1920s really starts what we might think of today as artistic glass. Very little of this was blown into a mold. The image that you're looking at right now is a peacock, and the peacock's body is solid glass out of colored glass, and the tail, the spread tail of the peacock, is spun glass, just threads of finely spun glass. They're glued together and then cut into this shape and then painted. That particular piece, the fan on the peacock, is about 8 inches across. And then they did smaller ones the same way. The glass body of these butterflies is solid colored glass, and then the wings on it are spun glass and then painted. In this image you see a large bird, a running deer, a swan, pheasant, and probably a... Got it. Yep. So this is probably a water bird of some kind. It might be a flamingo. But the body of this is clear glass that's been silvered, but everything that you see that's colored is not painted. Everything on that is colored glass. So we have white glass as the tail, we have gold glass as the legs, we have a yellow glass up here as the beak, and a red one at the top. And all of these would have been fused together in that annealing process onto the body. Sometimes people say, well, you know, glass blowers, you know, that's a business. How do you keep yourself, you know, and money all year long when you're not making Christmas decorations? So in this particular image, we see what the glass blowers did other times of the year. Okay, you'll see the image of this white deer, again blown out of white glass, not silvered, not painted. And it has across the bottom a clear glass base so that it would stand. The mouth is open. Generally, we believe that these were originally made as perfumes. Perfume would go in the inside. It's not silvered, so there's nothing that's going to be ruined. No contamination of your perfume. They had corks in some of them. You pull the cork out, you go like this, you get the perfume. But as soon as they were empty, they were too pretty to throw away, so they often became decorations for the knick-knack shelf, or if they had a Christmas-type theme, then they became Christmas decorations. A loop of string or a loop of wire in the mouths easily turned them into Christmas decorations. And we also have, in that image that you're looking at, we have a bull in a kind of a caramel colored glass, and we have a yellow colored duckling, and we have a goose. And one of the interesting things of these came out in the 1920s in what's called the artistic period. It's also a time period where the Germans had to mark that it's imported. So they have, most of these have a little paper disc on the bottom that says made in Germany. And again, here's where the cork went. The goose would stand on its legs, cork went in here, you could dab yourself with the perfume, but in this particular case, this one already has the insert for a glass wire so that this one could be hung, but it kind of hangs in an awkward position. Other than perfumes, another interesting job that some of the glass blowers had is making alcohol decanters. In the image that you're looking at, you have several, birds. You have a duck in there, and you have a water bird, and you have a swan in there. This is the swan that you're looking at. The interesting thing is that it looks just like the clear glass pieces that we've been looking at. We've got some colored glass up here. But its original intent is given away by all the labels that are on it that tell you, that the glass was made in Germany and that the liquors were made in wherever and what kind of a cordial it is. These were oftentimes given away at Christmas time as gifts. Okay? It's a nice glass full of a cordial. When it was empty, you had a nice gift that you could take home and you could hang on the tree if you wanted to. These, I say, are interesting because the liquor stickers are still on it. And we have then one more image of them, and this time full, still with the liquor on the inside. We have a giraffe, again, a base on the bottom so it can stand, the cork up here so you can pour it into your glass. There's a bird, there's a fish, and a rabbit in the image that you're looking at. And again, they have the labels up here that tell you what kind of liquor is on the inside. So, this is one of the ways that glass blowers made a living, making things that were other than Christmas decorations. This is another set of interesting pieces. Again, nothing here is blown in a mold. Everything is worked by the glass blower, twisting, turning, using a wooden paddle, using gloves, making a glass ring, and then making this free-blown owl. or it might be a cockatoo, and a piece down here at the bottom, and then fusing them all together. Also, you see in that image a stork with a ball, free-blown ball that hangs below it. And again, nothing is painted on this. Every color that you see is a piece of colored glass that's added to it. And in the last image that you're looking at, you see a chimney sweep inside of a ring. Chimney sweeps were thought to bring good luck. You sweep the chimney, it keeps your house from burning down. So chimney sweep type decorations were given away at Christmas time to each other as and family members as a good luck symbol. In this series of free-blown pieces, the first image that you see is this bird cage, which is made out of solid glass rods, all fused together to make the cage. And then the piece on the inside is a blue bird, which has been blown, and then annealed onto a small stand in the center. And then it has a small glass hanging ring on it. So again, this took a lot of skill. This was not a child type of piece of work. This was a father or grandfather's type of work, because not only does this cage have to be made, that bird has to be put on the inside, and then the rest of that glass annealed together. Again, something that could be easily have a mistake on it and the whole piece ruined. Then we have a flower basket that you're looking at, a free-blown basket with an annealed glass hanger, and then fabric flowers on the inside. And the last one in that particular image is, again, a bird cage. In this particular one, it's a little bit more interesting because the shell of the bird cage is blown into a mold. It's absolutely hollow in the bottom. The bird is fastened onto a cardboard piece and then pushed up into the inside, and the whole thing held together with the crinkled glass wire that you see. Another way that the German ornament maker could make money was to blow fruits and vegetables that could be laid on a compote on your dining room table as a piece of decoration. We're looking at the picture that's got a plum, a strawberry, a pear, an apple, and this banana. Okay? Some of them, like the strawberry that you're looking at there, was blown into a mold. The others are free blown. And then we have this dark glass which makes the leaves and the stem. They look black, but they're really a very dark amethyst color, a very dark purple color. And again, these could be sold not only as Christmas decorations, but they could be sold as pieces that would go onto a compote on the dining room table. Okay, the next image that you're looking at is what Germans called Fadenglas. Again, there's no color painted onto these ornaments like we saw in the earlier pieces. Every piece of color on there is a piece of colored glass. These were made using striped rods of glass. The stripes that you see in there, although they're twisted and swirling, they're done by the glass blower twisting that solid piece of glass and separating out the colors that were in the rod itself. And then they're silvered. But again, every piece of color that you see on there is colored glass. Again, from the 1920s, and a piece that's considered to be art glass. And they were made into a lot of different things: birds, pipes, balls. This one is a treetop that you see in the image again. A little bit more difficult to make, but again, made out of that glass rod that incorporated different bands of colored glass into it. The particular piece that you're looking at here has a mold-blown pine cone in the center, and then small pine cones hanging off of extended arms. That top part, the round part, has these annealed arms coming off. So this is a very three-dimensional type of piece, and because those small pieces would easily clang against the centerpiece, also a piece that was easily broken over the years. This is another one that has the annealed arms on it, a little bit newer, a centerpiece, an indent at the top, and bells hanging off of it. That's about a 7-inch type of piece, but again, the work of annealing in an artistic type period. The next piece is a tree topper, and that tree top is about 18 to 20 inches tall. It would have been started at the top. This is the part that was blown first. Then this part, again, a hot ball, blown, indented on both sides. Then another hot ball, somewhat larger, indented on both sides. Then a third hot ball, blown without melting or damaging any of the others, blown and indented on both sides. And then using wire and smaller mold-blown pieces of the bells, they were attached on. And the top of many of these look like they might have been broken, but they were not broken. They had tinsel spray in them like this to add color to it. So again, one that really shows the glass blower's art, because we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps in the glass blowing process, and then the silvering, the painting, and the wiring all to go together. And again, because of its length and its fragile glass, these were easily broken. American made. Now we're getting into a time period that I think most people can remember from their parents' tree or their grandparents' tree. The collectors simply call them shiny brights, and they were typically round balls. And Max Exhart formed Shiny Bright Corporation here in the United States in the 1930s. He was German, Max Exhart, and he saw the rise of Hitler as the demise of Germany, which he ultimately was correct. And he moved a glass blowing business to the United States. His big innovation, the big change that Max Exhart makes in the images that you're looking at right here, is that he goes to Corning Glass. Corning Glass is making light bulbs. And they're not making them by hand, they're making them in a ribbon blowing machine. Hot glass flows as a ribbon across this machine. A series of round molds that are in the shape of light bulbs of different sizes rotates through. A blast of air comes down, pushes that molten glass into the mold, and you have a perfectly round, all the time, exactly the same, just like the light bulbs, balls. Eckhart then buys those blanks. There's the ribbon blowing machine in the image that you're looking at, that the glass would go through. And here's the blanks. The first one that you're looking at is a round ball with the top of it that will be cut off eventually, but that's where it hooked into the mold and the air went through to blow it. Every ball that came out of that would be exactly round and exactly the same size. The next one is an indent, but again, it's not indented into hot glass, it's blown into a mold. And then the third one we see is a bell. Typically, you would never see those ornaments, at the top because they're fresh out of the mold. Somebody working at the Shiny Bright Corporation decided that those might be cool, and they've probably taken them home. So right below them, you see the finished product that would have been sold in the store. But the ones at the top were a little bit more unusual in the sense that they would have been considered seconds or whatever and brought home by workers. Then we have, this is how they were marketed. Particularly in the 1930s, late 30s and 1940s, you see Uncle Sam shaking hands with Santa Claus. American made is a big selling point on these ornaments, and the fact that they're all exactly the same. And you don't buy them one at a time anymore. You buy them by the dozen. Okay, so in this image you see not only were there round balls and indents, there's a wide range of ornaments that were made by the Shiny Bright Corporation. And one of the things that they used to decorate them is they did stenciling, like we see on this oblong shape. This one has, like in the image that you're seeing, a church in it, a snow scene. But lots and lots of the ornaments from this time period had a stenciled scene on them. Most of the ornaments that were made by Shiny Bright Corporation, anywhere from the 1930s up into the 1960s or 1970s, are very hard to date. Collectors just call them Shiny Brights, and they're based on how collectible they are. Some people collect just the stencils. They want all kinds of different stencils. But there is one time period that we can specifically say, this is when this ornament was made. Those were the ornaments that you're looking at in this particular image that were made between 1942 and 1945. Collectors call them war ornaments. The biggest thing that you can tell of these decorations are the fact that if you look across the tops, they all have paper or cardboard at the top, and they have no silvering on the inside. The silvering on the inside went to the Manhattan Project, which we know today as the atomic bomb, because silver wire conducted electricity much better than copper. So the silvering went there. The metal caps went into the war effort to make jeeps, tanks, guns, things like this. You think, well, that's just a really tiny piece of metal and a wire, but it adds up when you're making millions of them. So the silvering went first, and then the metal caps and the metal rings went next. And in the pieces across the top, you see a piece like this one, where you just have a piece of heavy paper on the inside that creates the hook and the ring and no silvering. And then there are two pieces in that image that are on the bottom that are unique. I found them in a collection. This is a war ornament, paper cap, paper hook at the top, no silvering on the inside. But this particular family decided that they would add a little bit of personality to it. So this side says Christmas, this side says 1945. Also, from the same collection, from the same family, we have this egg shape. This would have been bought as probably just a clear glass egg shape. All the color that you see on this is hand painted on. Has the paper cap, a string coming out of it. Written this way are the names of the family members. So we have Bill, Patricia, Alice, and Chris. Again, this would have been done 1944, 1945 during the war. Contemporary glass blowing is the next section that we want to talk about. And this is where the artistic element of glass blowing has really bloomed, because in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, and forward, glass blowers were not paid pennies apiece for many of the pieces that you were looking at. They are actually considered to be artists now and could ask larger prices on their decorations. This particular one you're looking at, Rudolf Buntner, who is a fifth-generation German glass blower living in Lauscha, and he's actually making an ornament for me when we visited his shop. And you can see some of the pieces in the background that are more artistic glass, not necessarily Christmas glass. And here is him working at that lamp. We might think of that more in terms of today as a Bunsen burner. And he's making that molten glass ball that he will blow into. This is another glass blower, and he's actually blowing into a mold to make a more modern ornament. His hands are actually clamping together that mold as he's blowing into it. And in this one, he's removing the unsilvered glass piece. And this gives you an idea of what that mold looks like on the inside and how it will be clamped together. This one is an elephant. It's made in Italy. The Italian ornament makers came into their own in the late 40s and into the 1950s. They specialized in making what we would call free-blown decorations. Nothing on there is mold-blown. Everything that you see in that elephant is blown separately and annealed together using that hot glass process. This is one that is a fountain, and it is using clear glass that's been silvered. It is also using blue glass that's twisted around to make it look like water flowing from a fountain. This again is probably from the 1990s in Italian. This one is German. We have this interesting, lady figure. She's got a flower-type head on her, and as a hat, and she's been turned into a butterfly with this very fine spun glass wings, and you can see that it's a very large piece. She's not silvered. Everything is painted on her, and then again mold blown with the addition of these large butterfly wings and antenna. Again, from about 1980s. This one is another butterfly girl. This one is made in, it's called Slavic Treasure, and it's made in the Eastern European countries. It's got a molded body. You can see it's like the wings folded around the girl, and then we have, a foot stepping out and her two arms, which again are this very finely annealed glass that are added to her. This is another one. This one is made by a company called Luna Glass that again was made in the Eastern European countries. This one is a centaur. The torso is blown into a mold, but the body of the horse and the legs, the tail, the bow, all that is annealed on, and it is free blown. So again, a tremendous amount of work to create this one piece, and the legs, the tail, the bow, all very delicate. The next image that you see is kind of a soldier, and it's very three-dimensional. We have a soldier's head, mustache, helmet, but he's got a spider body with legs, annealed on. So the head is going to be blown into a mold. Everything else on that body is, free-blown, hand-done. Again, very delicate, very skilled glass-blowing technies. The next set, we see combinations of the glassblower's work, modern glassblower's work, using both free-blown techniques and mold-blown techniques. In the image that you're looking at, you have a Santa Claus inside a balloon. The bottom of that is a ball that's free-blown. The top of it is a ball that's free-blown. And the Santa on the inside is molded. So you start off with a ball, then you blow that Santa, and then you finish with a ball, all in one piece. Again, any step in that process could go wrong. This one is a Santa and an anchor, or perhaps a St. Nicholas, because St. Nicholas was the patron saint of sailors. You have an anchor, so this part would have been blown first, then the Santa Claus, then these pieces, annealed on using that, fusing two pieces of hot glass together. Again, a very delicate process and a delicate piece of glass. This one was made in, again, probably 1990, in this modern artistic period. Okay, this image that you're seeing here is two swans, all free blown, painted. They come together at the necks, they make a heart shape, a beautiful piece, nice artistic piece from, again, probably the 1990s. This one has multiple steps into it. This one, again, made in more of the Baltic areas. And the top, we have a nice flower, all free blown. Pike in the back comes down into a bend. Then we have a mold-blown head. And then from the mold-blown head, we come back into the stem and the petals of the flower. Again, very careful work that has to be done to keep that all together, not breaking anything, and creating this lovely artistic piece. Again, this one is probably anywhere from 1990 up to about 2000 in its time period. Another large piece that shows the glassblower's art is this balloon. Balloons were very popular in the 1890s, hot air balloons. And this one is more from the 1990s, but as you can see, very large. Okay, again, this ball was blown first. The long pike is left open so that you could put a chromolithographed angel on both sides, and then again another large ball at the other end to make something that's about 20 inches tall. We don't want to change pictures. There we go. All right. This is a piece that was probably made about 2014 or so. Sometimes the photos don't do them as much good as looking at it three-dimensionally. This is a Christopher Radko piece blown in Germany. We have a free-blown point at the top, followed by a mold-blown angel and a star, followed by a mold-blown angel resting on a cloud of spun glass, followed by a large ball with an indent in it. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 different steps in this process. Again, in one long, solid piece of glass in which, many things could go wrong. This is, I think, to me, the epitome of the modern glass blower's art. And these do not sell for pennies anymore. These sell for multiple hundreds of dollars. And that's why the glass blowers have been doing pieces like this, because they can actually make some money at them. And the last image we have of the modern glass blower is, again, a very large treetop decoration put out by Christopher Radko Corporation. This is free-blown, or hand-blown, rather, in Germany. We have a large Russian-style Santa at the top, blown into a mold, then an egg shape. You can see where the pike continues into the egg shape, which is then indented, and then comes down to a large ball at the bottom, which is also indented, and then the large opening at the end, which would be for allow you to slide it over to the top of your tree. So again, these last two pieces in my mind are really the epitome of what the glass blowers have been able to do. But our last thing that we're going to talk about is, what's the future? We're looking at these exquisite pieces, And you know, the last slide that we're looking at right there, these are made in China. If you go to any large, large box stores, this is what you find for Christmas decorations. You don't find the pieces that we've been looking at. The angel that you see in that image looks like it's a glass angel. Nicely silvered, nicely painted. It's plastic. Silvered plastic. The ball at the top is not blown into a mold, not free blown, it's blown into a plastic mold. The wise man on the camel at the bottom is partially glass. The body of the camel and the body of the wise man are actually glass. But all the parts that are detailed, that stick out away from the glass, the camel's head, the man's heads, the hands, the arms, are all pieces of plastic. And remember when we looked at the pieces of glass that were annealed, hot glass to hot glass? This is just plastic glued on. So this perhaps is the future of what, the glass blowers. These are all machine blown, they're not hand blown anymore. The only way that you're going to find the nice pieces that we've shown here are in the boutiques. And they're not cheap anymore, but you're getting the artistry of a master glass blower. So, thank you very much for having me. Hope you've enjoyed the presentation.
Thank you, George, for that wonderful presentation. Now, I mentioned before the program that we are doing a list of virtual offerings in lieu of our Memories of Christmas Past exhibit this year. And I want to just quickly mention a few of those. We'll be offering holiday hands-on history activities on our website for families and children of all ages. Holiday time capsules, which are our history blog posts. And those are going to be based on various ethnic traditions and different cultures throughout this holiday season. Our vintage video series is going to take you back in time with some really festive holiday videos from throughout the Mahoning Valley's history. And then our holiday artifact series will highlight pieces from our collection from many different cultures. Now, all of the information for those is available on our website. In addition to those virtual programs, we're doing a few in-person things right here at the Tyler History Center. And that's going to be our very festive windows downstairs, trying to get you to feel like you're walking downtown in years past when we had those great shopping stores right here downtown. We will also have an exhibit in our Youngstown Foundation Community History Gallery, which highlights more pieces from our collection, and then a satellite gift shop in the ballroom for all of your holiday shopping needs. And yes, we will have those great vintage items that you're used to at the Arms Museum. So we hope to see you guys here at the Tyler History Center. Until then, stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.